So there I was, driving down the interstate, minding my own business. Just gotten off work. I was an ROTC instructor. I was still in the Army, actually. And I was ROTC instructor in Cincinnati at a university. And so, at the end of the day, I'm in my car. It's a hot afternoon. Sun's blazing. I get to go home. So I'm cruising down the interstate up I-75. And I look on the other side of the interstate. There's a bunch of cars stopped. And then I realize there's a wreck. 5 cars, bumper to bumper, boom, 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 boom. All of them had rear-ended each other. Well, in the Army, I was actually a military police officer. I've been a volunteer firefighter before. I've got some emergency medical training. I'm going to stop. It's the right thing to do. Can't tell if anybody's hurt. There's no police, no fire, no ambulance, no emergency vehicles at all. And there's a bunch of people standing around. So I pull over in the center median. I get a medical kit out of the back of my car, walk across the wide median, and I go up to the vehicles. So, like I said, there's 5 cars. They'd all rear-ended each other. It looked like somebody had slammed on their brakes, and then the other 4 were just too close. So I go up to the first driver. You okay? Oh, yeah, we're fine. Non-injury, we're fine. We're just, yeah, God, okay. You okay? Yeah, we're doing fine. 3rd vehicle, we're fine. 4th vehicle, we're doing good. If there's nobody hurt, I can go home. If somebody's hurt, then I'm committed to the accident until I'm relieved by a paramedic. So I get to the 5th vehicle. I'm like, hey, is everybody good here? Well, there was a lady that had stepped out of the vehicle. She was obviously the driver. And she was standing next to her vehicle. There was a center guardrail, and her door had hit the guardrail. So she had about maybe this much space to slide out. It's kind of like parking is around here in Montpelier. Yeah. And so she's kind of standing in that triangle, doing nothing. And there's 4 or 5 people standing around her, behind her. And so when I says, hey, you okay? Everybody good here? Nothing. She just looks at me with these big eyes. But there's no verbal communication. There's no nonverbal communication. And so I look at the other people, and I'm like, is she okay? And they look at me, they look at her, they look at me, and they're like, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Well, she won't talk. Okay. So, I look at the front of the vehicle. She's the last one. Nobody had rear-ended her. She had some minor damage on the front. The vehicle probably could have been drove away. It wasn't that bad. There was no airbag deployment. So I get up next to her, tell her who I am, and I initiate a patient assessment. So I'm checking her pupils. I'm looking if there's any fluids in the ears. I'm looking if there's any trauma, bruising, redness, seatbelt burns. Nothing. Her eyes will track me. Her head will move slightly. But there is no attempt to communicate with me at all. You're stone cold. So she's standing there. She's got a death grip on her cell phone. And I look down, and she's got a contact pulled up on it. And I can see this, it looked like an adult male, maybe in his 20s, his photo and a name. Well, she's got an employee ID card hanging around her neck. The last name's Match. Okay. So I ask if I can take the phone. She looks at the phone, looks at me, looks at the phone, and just kind of relaxes her hand. And I take the phone out of her hand, and I hit send. Person answers the phone, says, Mom? Ah, okay. So I explained to him what's going on. I explained that his mother has no visible injuries, that she's been in an accident, damage is minor, police, ambulance are on the way, but she won't talk to me, to anybody else. She won't move. She won't get out of that spot. She's absolutely lifeless. It's like a 1,000-yard stare. I spent a year in Iraq, and I hadn't seen soldiers after combat give the look that this woman was giving me. It was amazing. And so I explained all of that to him and the situation. And what he says, I will never forget. In the most calm, relaxed voice, he says, yeah, she really loves that car. What was wrong with that woman?
Was she in shock?
She was in absolute shock. She had lost all abilities to function because she was in shock. Why was she in shock?
She might have had whiplash.
An injury, maybe? My assessment revealed nothing.
Never been involved in an accident.
That is exactly what it was. Now, most people would actually say, well, maybe she's been in an accident before that was a near-death situation. Maybe she, 10 years ago, ran over a child. Maybe she was in a car as a passenger and the driver was killed in an accident. And all of those memories came back when she was in an accident because it sounded, smelled, felt like that previous experience. That's the definition of PTSD. And that's usually what has happened. And that's what I was looking to get out of her son. But he reveals in the conversation, no, she's never been in an accident. She really loves the car. She hadn't been in that situation before. Therefore, when introduced to that level of stress that she luckily in her life had never experienced before, she didn't know what to do. In any situation we are in, what we do is our brain looks for something similar and grasp onto to give us an idea of how to move forward in our current situation. Our brains are computers that are looking for old data files to figure out how to go forward. My 16-year-old had an accident. She bumped into a fence and knocked off a side view mirror. And when I got the phone call, I thought she had run over 20 villagers or something because she was in a sheer panic on the phone and crying and couldn't talk through the tears. I'm like, you knocked off a mirror on a chain link fence on a little narrow road going 20 miles an hour? We're okay. And all of you have probably had similar accidents. And so you are able to deal with stresses in your adult life now that you weren't able to so much as younger in your life because now you have life experiences. That woman didn't have it for that accident, and that's why she shut down. And so today's training is to give you a foundation. Put some tools in your toolbox, put some files in your computer that you can reference if you find yourself in one of these types of emergencies. Some of you, there will be people in this class that have experienced these things before, some of them, probably to an extreme. However, most of us haven't had these things to an extreme, and therefore we're at great risk in any emergency shutting down. The fight or flight, you hear about that term, what people do when they're in extreme stress. Well, there's also the freeze, and that's usually what people end up doing. And from videos of emergencies, it is amazing the number of people that stand there and don't move because they can't process what's going on around them. They're in disbelief, and they don't know what to do. And so what I am hoping that you pull from this class is I give you nuggets. I don't expect everybody to memorize everything I've told you, but the intent is that some of these things stick with you and that if you find yourself in an emergency, you can remember one thing from this class. And all you need is one thing, because if you get that one thing, then you go from freeze to taking that one step towards executing that one thing you remember, and your brain starts engaging again. You start figuring out how to mitigate the emergency, how to escape from it, and your actions, when you take that initial step to say, we have to go, or we need to do this, others around you will follow, and other people around you that are frozen in fear because the unthinkable is actually happening, you're motivating them. You're giving them that first step from your actions, and it will cause a whole wave of a response in a group of people. Good morning. My name is James Sides. I'm the Acting Director of Office of Security under the Buildings and General Services, BGS. As I mentioned, I am retired from the U.S. Army, and I was a military police officer. I just started working for the state this past October. Some of you may have picked up on a slight accent. Yes, I'm not from around here before I started working for the state in October. I actually live just south of Brattleboro, about 17 hours. From Tennessee, that's the accent you're hearing. I actually moved up here for my last duty assignment with the U.S. Army, which was down near Savannah, Georgia. So I've got a good southern accent going on. So just roll with it. Has anybody lived in the South before? Okay, you're firsthand, you're in a good location. Here's what I'm gonna need from you. Sometimes I use words that don't make sense outside of the southeastern US, so I need you to be my translator, okay? Yeah, okay, well, all right, well, yeah. How long have you been in Vermont?
About a year.
Oh, boy.
Yes, that's all top of my car.
Yeah, I can only hope. I need to come work in your office. So, all right, well, if I say anything and it's like, what is he saying? Just look at her. And sometimes also I have a Tennessee education, so sometimes I just make up words. So just roll with it. Just let it go. So, my background before I came in the Army, I was a military police officer, but I spent like 6-7 years as a police chief for Army bases, which are just like cities, and I was an emergency services director. So I oversaw fire department, a security guard force, and worked in emergency management. When I came here, this program was just taking off, and then it was given to me to move forward with it. I tell you all of that so that you have some confidence in the training I'm sharing with you today. Each of these topics, I could spend an entire day or a week teaching. However, we're not doing that. We're just hitting the foundations. So you've got those nuggets I was talking about. Some of you have probably, most likely, get some experience different than necessarily what I'm talking about. Doesn't mean that one is right and one's the wrong. They're both probably absolutely right. So don't use this classes to undo something else you've heard necessarily. I'm just giving you more information. Every emergency is unique. The foundational tactics, the strategy in dealing with those emergencies is the same, but everything's going to have a little different element to it as well. So when it all comes down to it, you just got to use some common sense if you find yourself in an emergency. However, you use this instruction as a foundation to give you an idea which direction to look forward to. But I hit this slide. I just want you to know that the information that I'm presenting today is proven. There is strong information that supports it, and this will absolutely help you out. Okay, today's agenda, real quickly, the boring stuff up front is what is the state doing for preparing you and your buildings for an emergency. I'm going to hit that briefly, but then we're going to focus on the meat of it, which is these 5 topics, and each one roughly 10 to 20 minutes each. They kind of build up. The violence one will probably take about 30 minutes, and it's actually the most interesting. So if you need to go, I'd rather you go earlier and come back than sliding out and missing the part where we talk about active shooters and so forth with some demonstrations. All right, the things I'm talking about in this class can trigger some of those moments that people have had in events in their lives, 10, 20 years ago, and it comes back up. So I want to hit trauma informed. You all have free access to the Employee Assistance Program. There's the web page, the password for the website, and their phone number. No one ever wants to write it down at the beginning, but I showed the slide. It's about the third to last slide. And so if something's come up in that 2 hours and it's bothering you, then copy it down and give them a call. Mental health is part of total health, and you need to take care of yourself. Also, I will throw out some lame jokes now and then. I'm not making light of the topics that we're discussing today. What I'm trying to do is kind of balance it, because some of these things can be somewhat dark. All right, so what is the state doing? It is what I'm trying to do is we're going from building to building and developing an emergency procedures plan per building, not per agency, not per department, per building. And so with buildings like 120, 133, state, multiple tenants, and it can be a little more complicated because it's multiple chains of command. But in an emergency, you can't have 2 plans reacting to the emergency. And the most critical thing to be accomplished during the emergency is accountability. And so if each department's going to a different evacuation point, for example, then nobody can go up to the fire chief and say, everybody's out of the building. He doesn't care if TAX got out or if ADS got out or if BGS got out. They want to know, is everybody out of the building or not? And so we're developing plans, 1 plan per building, and that's what the emergency procedures plan is. And my office goes and facilitates the planning and the discussion for that. So that's what the plan is. It establishes an emergency chain of command. It identifies a single evacuation point, and we're except for Waterbury, due to that building's size, we're creating or designating indoor evacuation points. The one thing I have learned since living in Vermont, I mentioned I moved here in October. Well, winter hit about 3 hours after I got here. Yeah, and I understand it pretty quick that it's getting breezy, and sometimes you need a windbreaker in January. So it can be, yeah. And so we don't need an evacuation point that's in a parking lot next to a building. The only time those work is when it's a false alarm. So we're moving you indoors, but that's part of the EPP process. All right, so this is kind of the cycle. There's a lot of data there, but just basically, it starts here about the 10 o'clock position. Employees complete BGS Security Foundations training. Congratulations, step one's complete by you. That's what you're doing today. Then we work with your building to develop a plan, and then once the plan's good with everybody in the building, then we share it with local police and fire. They maybe get some input, and then we conduct a drill. And so that process is occurring in all your buildings now. Once the plan has been drilled and it's reviewed, make sure we don't need to change anything, your building has a plan now, a single plan. That's a wonderful thing. It's a slow process to get there. We're getting there. But then the bottom half of this is just once the plan's made, then you've got to keep it fresh. Somebody needs to look at it every 3 months and make sure everything is up to date. One of the pages in there, for example, is a contact list. And when I started working here, I was given some old plans, and they went back to like 2012. And so I started flipping through these plans, and on the back, when I got to the contents page, this particular building, the list of contacts was the list of who's retired in state government and their pager numbers. So that's why we've got to stay on top and review these plans, and then just kind of a continuous cycle. And we want to, once your building's got a plan, once a year we want to do an all hazards drill. And remember, it has to be a plan for all hazards, not just fire alarms. So, okay, within the plan, I talked about the emergency chain of command. There's a designated official, emergency coordinating manager, and multiple safety wardens per building. I just want to introduce these to you. The DO, honestly, you don't have to worry about. It's your strategic person. They might even be at the building. They're your commissioners, deputy secretaries, senior level people that empower the others to do their jobs and to provide long-term and strategic training and thought into having the plan. The person you got to ensure that you know is the person that's going to be wearing this vest during the emergency coordinating manager. Every building's going to have a minimum of one, and maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 3 alternates, or if you're Waterbury complex, then 37 alternates. So the ECM is the voice of the state to the emergency first responders, to that fire assistant chief or that police captain. And so the safety wardens are making sure you all are all there and that nobody's injured, and then reports that information to the ECM, who then is standing next to that fire chief's car or the SUV with the police incident commander, and is providing them information. And then they're providing it back. Waterbury State Office Complex last November had a fire alarm activation due to a faulty sprinkler system that was on maintenance by a contractor, not BGS, so we're good. None of the ECMs were there that day, just Murphy's Law. And so all the safety wardens kicked in, well, not kicked in, but they did their jobs. However, none of the safety wardens stood up, had been instructed to stand up and become the acting ECM if there wasn't an ECM. So when the fire chief cleared the building, emergency's over, systems reset, the fire chief didn't have anybody to talk to, so he found the nearest safety warden who was close to the flagpole in that big parking lot at Waterbury between the river and the building, and said, hey, you're all good, you can go back in the building. Awesome. So those 250 people went back in the building. About 10 minutes later, one of them, while sitting at their desk, got a cell phone call. Hey, can you see anything on your side of the building? We're freezing over here. What's going on? Yeah, there was a breakdown in chain of command, in the communications for the chain of command, because there were no ECMs. And so that's why we're designating the ECM position and the safety warden positions and doing training in our class for the people in those jobs so they understand these duties, and you got a good flow of information. And so that way, when Bob didn't evacuate, somebody knows it and is reporting it up. and then your fire or police can change their tactics to address that. So Bob is a fictional character whose actions that we talk about today are going to be based on real events that either Vermont State, or in some few cases, federal employees have committed. No offense to anybody that's named Bob, but Bob is the one that gives me job security, unfortunately. And it's one reason that we have this training, because there's always a Bob that's going to do the opposite of what they should be doing. All right, mentioned the safety warden. We used to think of them as fire wardens, and their job was to get everybody out of the building. They're the ones that just said, Bob, get out of the building. Okay, they get outside and their job's done. But what we're seeing is that's not the case. The safety wardens have to continue to work outside because state employees are some of the most impatient people on the planet. And if they don't have a cell phone or their car keys, they go into this weird shake and they have to do something. You've got to be able to have Candy Crush while you're waiting on the fire department. So you laugh, but you know it's true. So the safety wardens are the ones that have to keep the employees together. Employees can't leave. If it was a crime, for an example, and they're on the 4th floor and they left and there was nothing going on the 4th floor, their testimony to the police to be interviewed is critical because it shows nothing happened on the 4th floor. That needs to be documented as much as what did happen on the 1st floor. Also, people can slip out. You're doing the secondary check on accountability, and wait a minute, where's Bob? I thought he was here when we did the first check. Well, now we don't know where he's at. Well, Bob had left his cell phone in the building. He can't go back in. He got frustrated, but he had his car keys, so he left. So when you call Bob, there's no answer. And now it starts this whole panic thing. So that's why everybody's got to stay in the evacuation point, and that's why the safety wardens are key into that, making that happen. They also assist in other tasks. If this is a real emergency, there's people injured, the safety wardens are the ones that identify them. They may ask other employees to help move patients. You may be in a parking lot where cars are trying to enter, so you can have an employee not in the road, but staying on the grass, and just, customers coming into the parking lot saying, hey, we're closed. Don't try to get in the building. We got an emergency going on. You'll have to reschedule, and pushing them on. Okay. We now start on the 5 categories. Yay! And the most exciting, bomb threat. All right. Woo! Okay. Is a bomb threat an emergency? Yeah. Do you automatically evacuate when there's a bomb threat? What?
Yes, please.
Yes, please? Yeah, I got one yes, one yeah. It depends. Oh, now we've got a little... Yeah, that's a female answer. Yeah. First, let's talk about the guidance for a bomb threat. Everybody got one of these. Did anybody not? I have extras on the table up here. This is what I need you to do with this card. For those on TV, this card, you need to get a copy of this and put this next to your phone, okay? Thank you. So they're not laughing at my jokes. You have to because you're here and I can see you. So, all right, so this card, here's what I need you to do with it. I need you to put it somewhere that while you're holding a phone, you can reach that card with one hand and get it out. If you put it in a file drawer that's kind of tight and you need 2 hands to pull it open, if you put it under a plexiglass and you got your monitor sitting on top of that plexiglass, that doesn't work. Now, you don't have to prominently, tape it on the wall. I know this isn't the most prettiest thing that you want to frame next to your kids, but what I would recommend, or at least what I do at my desk, is put a little piece of tape on it, and my desk faces the wall, so I slide it so about that much. I can see just the title. I remember it's there, but it's not ugly, but it's easy to pull out. We don't know who's going to get that bomb threat call. I've seen it go all the way from a general officer to the phone in the lobby, and a customer picks up. You don't know. The caller is going to quickly tell you the threat and then hang up. But in that call, there's critical information that you can pull from the person. If you don't start engaging that caller immediately, they're going to hang up. And so what we need you to do is on the back of this thing, there's a list of questions. And immediately start asking them the questions. Now, do you think a person calling in a bomb threat is going to answer your questions? Probably not. But what are they going to do? They're going to keep talking. Because the worst thing for a person calling in a bomb threat to have happen is that you don't believe them. Because their whole plan's foiled. And so when you engage in questions, it comes across to them that you're not necessarily convinced. They got to continue to engage you to convince you. And so they're going to just start repeating the same things over and over again. Now, bomb threats. How many bomb threats in the last 20 years resulted in an actual bomb being found? Yeah, guess what? I don't know either. Because the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms website that tracks bomb threats in the United States won't list the information because it is so low. So in doing some research, I found an article wrote in 2006 where the author of this national newspaper said that in his previous 20-year research, he found 2. And there's probably dozens of bomb threats made in the United States daily. So if you think about it, why would a person call in a bomb threat? Have you ever heard of somebody calling National Bank and saying, I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock to rob you? Why would somebody report their crime before they do it? Some would say, well, to give everybody a chance to get out of the building. Well, then just set the bomb off at 3 a.m. There's 2 general themes of why people call in a bomb threat, with exceptions, with many exceptions, but this is the general theme. They're either wanting to change their work environment to their benefit in some capacity, or it's ideological, like a mental health issue with politics mixed in. They're striking back at the government, they're tired of paying taxes, and they're using the bomb threat as a way of punishment, disruption, confusion, chaos, fear. The threat is the crime. That's all they're trying to do. And it's so easy to do. I can do it right now. So anybody, somebody give me number 133. No, I'm kidding. But you see how easy that would be. But going back to the first reason, work-related. So let's say I'm a truck driver for a private company and I have to take your analysis twice a year. Well, they got a no drugs policy, including marijuana. But hey, Vermont, it's 1 July. I can hit the weed now. Yeah. And so Saturday night, I hit it hard. Well, then Monday morning about 5 a.m., I'm awoken by a phone call. Hey, we need you to come to work 30 minutes early because you got to take your analysis. Oh, no. If I take the urinalysis and fail, I'm going to lose my job. But let me do some quick Google searching. Ooh, THC and marijuana can be out of your system in approximately 72 hours after use. Saturday night. If I can delay my urinalysis by 1 day, I get to keep my job. How am I going to interrupt everything at work and get I'll call in a bomb threat? So going back to the example, is a bomb threat an automatic evacuation? So then let me rephrase it this way. Los Angeles County school system. I think it's roughly around 270 schools. First day of finals, they get a call from somebody who sounds like they're 13 years old, and they say, there's a bomb in one of the schools, and they hang up. Are you going to evacuate? Probably not. There's a spectrum. And so we'll talk about that spectrum in a bit, because there's some calls you definitely do evacuate. But for us to be able to make that decision, law enforcement and for the building managers on if we're going to evacuate or not, it all comes back to the phone call, you. And so you start asking that person questions. Well, while they're not answering your questions, you may hear something in the background. You may hear an airplane fly over. I can go to a website right now and identify where every plane's been. And so if we know it's an 802 area code, and maybe there's only 3 or 4 planes over Vermont, at that moment, I've now identified what city the phone call came from. Maybe there's a siren in the background. I can go pull police dispatch and see who had an emergency at the time of the phone call. Maybe while they're telling you, I'm not answering any of your questions, you hear in the background, Billy, you better take the trash out. I'm tired of asking you. It's not unlikely. So if you look at the questions, if you would, look at the last question. What is the last question, my fellow Southern speaker?
What is your name? Where are you?
Yeah. Do you think a caller would actually answer that? What is your name?
Anna?
Well, Anna just told me your name. She did it instantly because we do it all the time. So about 2 years ago at a federal building in Chittenden County, my boss, the director, was working for the Federal Protective Service, and he tells this his story that they responded to a bomb threat at that federal facility. A secretary had the card, pulled the card out, started asking the questions. Caller refused to answer the questions, and when she got to that question, the caller says, "Bob, oops," and hung up the phone. Because it's habit. And so they got a first name. And so what did the police do? Because you got Federal Protective Service, local police, and FBI responded. So they get to the office. "Oh, you're the office manager. Hey, can you get with HR? I need a list of all employees that didn't come to work today." "Oh, okay. Here's your list." "Oh, look, the 17th employee is named Bob." "Who's Bob's supervisor?" "Oh, hey, you're a supervisor. You supervise Bob? Great. Hey, you got his phone number?" "Yeah, we're going to need his home and address, home phone number, cell phone, whatever you got." "Okay. Call it Bob." No answer. Call his house. No answer. "Let's go pay Bob a visit." So they get in the G car, they drive across town, go to his house, knocks on the door. Bob opens the door, drops his head, and confesses. The whole event was over in under 90 minutes. There was no evacuation or disruption to service. He was charged with a federal crime, all because somebody asked the questions on the card. So please have the card if you have a desk. I know like a lot of people in BGS, they're all over the place. Somebody asked me about well, what about cell phones? It's like, oh, it's easy. You just tape this to the back of your cell phone and you're good. So no, rarely do you get a call like that from on a cell phone. They're usually from a cell phone, but not on it. I just want to show these briefly to give you an idea of that spectrum of when your building management is trying to make an initial decision, and then once police shows up, they'll help make that decision. I'm not saying you don't evacuate in all cases and it's not an emergency. It is an emergency. It is a 911 call, but then you start the process. So calls that fall in these categories are considered low threat, and you're unlikely to evacuate. Here's some medium threat things, and you're getting in the zone that you probably should evacuate. But again, other indicators and big picture, what information was captured on the card, so forth. Then you get into high risk. When you got a call that falls in these categories, try to remember to tell your coworkers as you're running out the building why you're running out the building. Okay? I would absolutely recommend, in most cases, an evacuation. Now, there's exceptions to all of this. Last year, there was a series of phone calls of bomb threats by phone made to several schools up the East Coast, like every day for 2 weeks. And all the numbers were originating out of Europe. And they were providing very specific information on the phone of that school, like describing it, and what they're going to do, and very graphic, and then hanging up. And it was a computer-generated voice where people type it in and have the computer read it. FBI's involved, big case. But after about a week, and it was the same thing happening over and over and over again, and then the FBI realized all the information they were getting was from going to Google Maps and doing the street view, and then it was an overseas number. The FBI started telling people, yeah, if you get a phone call, even though it's in this category, if it's hitting these parameters, ignore it and just call us so we can log it. And they started doing that, and then within a week, the call stopped. So it's kind of an art and a science, but before police can show up, it is the building manager and the ECM that makes the decision if we're going to go or not. And if you make that decision, it's okay. Okay, suspicious mail. All right. For you all that are in Montpelier and Waterbury, your mail is going to Middlesex. BGS Postal is receiving your mail and is doing a screening. And that's after the post office gets it. However, FedEx, UPS, they're delivering direct. They got their own systems in place, and they do catch things as well. But kind of understand that based on where your mail's come in, there's different types of screening. And then you've got the mail coming in your building. Even though there was screening done at different facilities, it was at mass levels and it's automated. You all probably have a person in your office or your floor or building that gets the mail and then quickly sorts it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you've got just mail lockers and they go straight in there. You all that receive mail have to understand what to look for indicators and what makes a letter or a package suspicious. Because those checks and balances, you're actually part of. You're the last one. And so I'm going to show you what makes a letter suspicious and a package. First, this is the post office recently, the distribution center that covers Vermont recently went to this system, actually a few years ago, but mail goes through here, and inside there the letter's slapped and the machine's measuring for anthrax. And so if it's slapped and any of the anthrax comes out, the machine will pick it up. So pretty nice system. BGS, this is the x-ray machine at the Middlesex Postal Center. If your mail comes from there, sorry Chittenden County, then your mail is being x-rayed here as well. So let's talk about what a suspicious letter is, because maybe the letter was brought to your lobby and dropped off. Maybe it never even went into the mail system. And so here's what you're looking for in a letter. If you pick a letter up and you stop and you look at it and you go, well, this is weird, it's probably suspicious. Now, having any of these indicators on a letter doesn't make it suspicious. Having multiple indicators makes it suspicious. And it's a spectrum. There's no math to this. There's kind of a gut feeling. It's common sense. But if you get a letter and there's 2 stamps on it versus 1, it doesn't mean the bomb squad necessarily needs to blow it up in place. However, if it has 3 stamps on it, it's from a foreign country, there's no return address, and it's addressed to the director of tax when there is no director of tax, it's a commissioner of tax. Those are like 4 indicators I just rattled off, and that letter is now suspicious. For packages, all the things about a letter apply, and then you have the additional things, such as there's stains on it. There's, wire protruding, things like that. The reason for the stains is a bomb is potentially going to have a mechanical element to it. And mechanical items, machines, motors, sometimes need a liquid to make them work, like oil. And sometimes that will leak. And sometimes when it leaks, it will soak through the packaging. But it takes a few days for it to get to you, and therefore it dries. And so you get a ring. Just like I learned that throughout the winter here in Vermont, I get around my pants made of salt. I don't know, it's fun. I love how this plays out. I'd see people in suits. Eric was the first one. He's wearing in suits, and he's got these rubber boots on. I'm like, man, I like this. This is a good place to be. So, but if you see that on a package, not so much, okay? Excessive postage. Why is excessive postage an indicator?
Because they don't know the system.
I would give you that. Yes?
Because if they didn't take it in to get weighed to see how much it's going to cost, so they want to make sure they had enough so it wouldn't be sent back.
Yeah.
He's smarter than me.
Yeah. At least on that one question.
Is
So,
there a pay raise in this?
is there a pay raise? No, but I bet if you catch a suspicious package and doesn't anybody get hurt, there might be. So, yes. So that's it. The person mailing the package doesn't want to go in the post office where there's witnesses connecting them with the package. Also, they really don't want the package being sent back to them. It's really awkward when you come home from work after you mailed a package off and the package came back to mom and now mom's not there and you're trying to explain to the kids why mom's not here anymore because she got the returned mail. That was a sick joke, I know. Just roll with it, people. Just roll with it. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass around a letter, a suspicious letter. I want you to look at the different indicators on this. Also, the main reason I'm passing this around, I want you to feel it. There's something in here other than paper, and that in itself is an indicator. You're going to feel powder in here. Now, this letter is completely sealed up. I've taped it up as much as I can. Yet, you can smell what's in here. And so the point with that is, there is no such thing as a sealed letter. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to see that. So yeah, we'll start with you. So what happens when you see that letter? And I have to have a fake letter in my hands. I'm going to use a bomb shooter letter. So if you get a letter and it's at your desk and you're sitting there and you're like, no return address, what? Ontario, Canada, there's like 6 stamps on this thing. We don't have a director. Oh, I just named 4 indicators. This is now suspicious. So what do you do? What is the, yes, but that's step 3. Thank you. That was it. Put the stinking thing down.
Step away from the letter.
We know that if we say this is a suspicious package, we are generating a huge emergency response, and that feels like a really big thing, and we don't want to be the one to pull that trigger and then it not be true. And we're going to get embarrassed about that if we create all this pandemonium. And so, what do we want? We want validation. Man, this looks suspicious, but I don't know. Hey, yes! Does this look suspicious to you? I don't know. What do you think? And oh man, it's burning my eyes. Andy, what do you think about that? I know. We want to like run all over the place with a stinking letter. Well, guess what you're doing, folks? You're selecting who's going to go to the parking lot of the emergency room with you to get decontaminated. Because you're continuing the path through the building and you're getting this stuff all over the place. And we don't know what's in it. And if there's something in it, even if it's powdered sugar, that's got to get tested. And it's going to take hours and then maybe even a full day before the experts can test this thing. But if you've been contaminated, we don't know. So guess what? We got to treat you as if you're contaminated until we can prove otherwise. It's like rabies shots. Some wild animal bit you, yep, you're getting the shots. It doesn't matter. You don't know. We got to treat you. So what you just did was you selected who's going to go with you and get a bath in the middle of the parking lot after they cut all your clothes off. You want to get close to your coworkers? Yeah. Now, don't worry. This is a training photo. The 2 guys in the middle, those are like hazmat responders. So if you were in this photo, you would be in your birthday suit. But they're gonna hang tarps up around you. Because see, they can't take you in the emergency room because then you're going to contaminate the building. So they got to treat you out in the stinking parking lot. Don't matter if it's January or not. Woo! But they're going to put the tarps up around you so at least you have some privacy until the WCAX helicopter shows up. Yeah. So, step 1, stop and put it down, leave, tell the others around you, I got a suspicious letter, sorry guys, but we're done. Everybody out. Then go wash up. Soap and water is an amazing thing. You don't need to do Clorox and pour it all over your face. No, don't have to do that. And evacuate. Rule of thumb, generally we'll evacuate a floor for a letter and we'll evacuate a building for a package. But that's just kind of where you start from. It depends the layout of the building, the size of the package, the number of indicators, and all of these things. Also probably shut the HVAC system off. So that's what's going to trigger. So let's look at yes, sir?
Is the fear of using a cell phone that it would set off a bomb? Is it any cell phone would?
For a package, not a letter, there is a low-level chance that the package is set up to when it receives a phone call that is triggering the device. We saw a lot of that in Iraq, actually. Haven't seen it in the United States, but just as an abundance of caution, we just say don't use any electronic devices around a package that's got a bomb in it, just in case. We don't want to artificially trigger it. Some other things may have an electrical board, and radio waves can interfere with it. So police and fire, when they respond, they don't even have their radios. They leave them out of the immediate area when they walk up to inspect a device. Okay, so I mentioned I was in the Army. Before I moved to Georgia, I was actually stationed in Japan. I was the emergency services director and a military police battalion commander just outside of Tokyo. Well, one day, I received this letter in my inbox. Is this letter suspicious?
Shirley Temple is automatically.
Yes. There's always a state employee that says, Shirley Temple, really? I love that. So, okay, we'll call that a half indicator because that's an unusual stamp. But, oh, now we're talking. So who's this addressed to? Emperor Akito. Now, the Japanese, they loved me. I was great, even though they couldn't understand me or get my jokes. But I honestly didn't have a working relationship with the Emperor of Japan. Amazing, I know. We never had tea, wouldn't answer my text messages, nothing there. So why am I getting his mail? Okay, so now that's where we get into the title and the path. And okay, so that's an absolute indicator. What else? No return address. I got a name, but no return address. 2. What else? A 2.5, I guess. I'll also let you know when I felt the envelope, there's nothing in there, and it felt like a single piece of paper. Yeah, Spokane, Washington, if that's what you're looking at. So this came from the United States to Japan. So you could say this is an international letter. And I also should point out, this is a standard military address overseas. We get a lot of mail from the U.S., so it's not necessarily an indicator as being international mail. However, we don't have any military in Spokane. So my mail is usually coming from a military source in the United States if it's not family or friends. So there was a minor indicator it was coming out of Spokane. What else? I have 2 stamps on a letter that only needed 1 stamp. So we have excessive stamps, unusual origin, a title that doesn't go from that person through this unit, and no return address. I have 4 indicators. So what do? Do I go pick who I want to join me and get scrubbed down and stripped down? No. I put it down, absolutely. I'm like, well, no, here was the first thing I did. Oh, crap. Then I put it down, then I walked out, shut my door, keep air from circulating, grabbed my secretary, said, yep, when we're closed. And then I had to do something that was very awkward for an emergency services director. I had to call my own 911 center. And I did it on the regular 911 line, and when they realized it was me, like, sir, you're calling on the 911 line. I know I am. So sure enough, full fire department response, police, ambulance on standby, they seal off the building, everybody's kicked out. I mean, I am who I am, but I'm still like, man, I hope this is not just me and I missed this, you know? So fire department comes in. They've got like a little, an air quality device, blinking lights. Think Ghostbusters with a little thing. Yeah, it's something like that. And they're coming through and they're checking the air quality, and they come all the way up to the envelope on my desk. Clear. Firefighter, as you can see, is wearing that gear. He's on his own air, no exposed skin. There's a team and a backup outside. There's an ambulance. And then he does a litmus test with some paper on the letter to see if it comes back for anything. Negative. Opens the letter. Air test again. Then the paper litmus test again. Nothing. The letter was clean. There was no hazardous materials in the letter. So then he steps out on the balcony, and the photo on the right is what we consider the all clear. He's holding it up in the open envelope, which probably wouldn't be a good thing to do if it wasn't clear. So that ended the emergency. Now, did that firefighter come back down to the first floor and look at me and say, why did you call us? There was nothing in this. No. Why didn't he do that? Yes, somebody stole my joke. Yes, that's exactly why. Yes. But if I hadn't been his boss, it was the same thing. He didn't know either. And the firefighters and police and EMTs, paramedics, they'd rather respond to a possible emergency and use their training and equipment to mitigate it properly than not be called, and then you're doing it on your own, and now we've got 12 people going to the hospital. Is it probably 1 in 1,000 chance that there's going to be something in there? Yeah, it's very rare. A lot of times it's hoax or it's somebody with mental health issues or something like that, but you don't know. So let the experts do their jobs and properly clear it. All right, any questions on suspicious letters or packages? No. What did the letter say? Thank you, I needed that. Can you all read that? I'll read it. Akito, please accept my apologies for the intrusion of our president. It is not America's intent to be offensive. Sincerely, Mark C. Christensen. Now, before we get into a political debate in this room, and that's not the purpose of this training, May 23rd, 2016, the president was Obama. We have no idea what the president did that made Mark think that he was insulting the Emperor of Japan. Don't know. Probably, potentially a mental health issue. Don't know, but there it is. And so these are the things you potentially can deal with. And so you get something that is suspicious, it goes back to the indicators. You have multiple indicators. I like the rules of 3 as a guide, but it doesn't have to be 3. You could have one glaring indicator, or you have a bunch of minor ones. But if you feel this thing is suspicious, guess what? That decision is on you, and we need you to make that decision on behalf of everybody else without dragging them over to look at it as well. Okay? All right, fire, next category. What do you do if you catch on fire? Right, stop, drop, and roll. Everybody knows that. So let's not even talk about that. We've all been through kindergarten class. What we're going to talk about is those minor fires that are much more common in the workplace. If you have a fire, even if it's small, call 911. So let's talk a scenario here. We're going to back up. I don't see that just yet. So we talked about Bob. So Bob loves popcorn, especially Friday clock. Yeah, Friday at 3 o'clock. I almost needed you on that one. He pops popcorn. Now, we know what happens when you cook popcorn in the Waterbury State Office Complex. It triggers a fire alarm every Friday at 3 o'clock. So let's say the microwave is over here. Well, Bob hit the 0 one too many times, so instead of 3 minutes, he made it 30. So 27 minutes into it, it catches on fire. And the microwave burns for a bit because nobody's walking by that immediate area. And it's not Waterbury that has this massively sensitive fire suppression system. So it burns for a little bit. So another employee comes in, realizes it, grabs a pot of coffee, grabs a bottle of water, and puts fire out. Fire's out. Do we need the fire department? Yes. Why? Yes. That's one. What else? Yes, that's absolutely true, but we don't care about their paperwork, so it's not one of the two I'm hammering. Yes, sir?
Because that is what they are trained to assess. Make sure that the fire is out, it's not in the wall, it has not, that it has been contained.
That is absolutely correct. I'm going to roll it into what they said about the wiring. So that's really the true bigger picture, and wiring's part of that. So they're going to investigate, make sure the fire's out. We'll talk about that in a second. There's one other thing they're going to do for us. What does the fire make? Smoke. Smoke from artificial items that were manufactured is much, much deadlier than the organic smoke from wood like you have at a campfire. And we've all been to campfires, and you got your chair sitting there, and then Bob showed up unannounced, and you're sitting there around the campfire in your little lawn chair, and then Bob walks by, and it changes the direction of the smoke, and it's in your face now, and so you get your chair, and you try to bounce it off to the side to get out of the stream of smoke, and then here comes Bob again, like, Bob, stop walking around the... Okay, we hate that smoke. The smoke that occurs from like a microwave fire, carpet, anything hanging on the walls, is almost like cotton. It's extremely thick, it's nasty. Think of it when a tire is burning. And when you breathe that stuff, it just coats the inside of your lungs. And that's where smoke inhalation comes from. So maybe this was a minor fire. There's only a little haze of gray smoke. When those firefighters come in the building, they're going to be wearing their air mask because they know. And so they're going to get rid of the smoke for you. You can't do it by just putting a fan up and trying to blow it out. So let's talk about the first thing that we hit, about the electrical side. So if you've got a fire, you got an electrical item that short-circuited, the short may occur in the wall instead of at the device. And so you've put out what you think is the fire, but what you don't know is there's some copper leads that shortened out, and the end of a copper, when it has an electrical short in it, the end of it turns into like a little BB in some cases. And the BB is extremely hot and it retains heat. And the inside of an outlet is a plastic box surrounded by wood studs. So back in when I was in college and on a volunteer fire department, we went to a house fire. We put it out. 4 hours later, we were called back to the same fire. We missed what we call a hot spot. You may have a hot spot in the wall out of sight, and so you think you put the fire out. Well, we don't need all the fire trucks coming here. The boss is going to be angry. We're going to evacuate the building. That's dumb. The fire's out. We'll just put up a fan to get rid of some of the gray smoke hovering around the ceiling. It's all good. You don't want to get in trouble or get Bob in trouble, even though it's the third time he's done it. And so you don't want to call. It goes back to the letter. You don't want to cause a disruption. You don't want to interrupt people. You don't want to inconvenience and all of these things. I'm telling you, you've got to put all of that aside and think about the bigger picture here. And so the firefighters are going to come, not even charging the state a dime, free service, yay. They're going to come and they're going to investigate. And they have a device called a TIC, a thermal imaging camera. Looks like what the police use on the side of the interstate when they're looking at your car. You need to slow down. I was with a couple of y'all this morning. So kidding. The TIC will look into the walls and identify heat or abnormalities. I did it, yes. So this is not fire. This is temperature difference. That's a temperature gauge right there. So now this is a fire that's going on in another room of the house, and there's a firefighter and his hose, but this room is getting extremely hot, and that's what this TIC is picking up. But what they will do in a small fire that's been put out, they will check all the walls, and they're going to run it all the way back to the breaker, because maybe it wasn't even the fuse box or the outlet, but it's the fuse box in another room. So you got to give them that opportunity to come in there and professionally check things. If you went up and leaned against the wall with your hand and then took your hand down, they'll see the outline of your hand. It's a wonderful system. You got to let them do it. This is a positive pressure ventilation fan, a PPV. It's about 4 or 5 times faster, more powerful than any fan you've ever seen. Think of an airboat, big fan on the back. So Bob started a small fire here and put it out. We all may try to put a fan in a doorway blowing out of the room trying to pull the smoke out. They'd reverse it. What they would do is put the fan in that door blowing in and seal off all the other doors. Think of a balloon. They're pressurizing the room. Then they're going to figure out the closest path outside. And if it's down a long hallway, they may hang a tarp to seal off other areas. They're going to create a path right out the building. Then they're going to go to that door and crack it. They're not going to throw it open. When they crack it, it's now creating a positive pressure, and that smoke will just jet right outside the room. They've got the equipment, they've got the training, let them do their job. And then they're going to even do a carbon monoxide check through the whole building to make sure you're breathing safe air, because maybe some of the smoke got into the air duct system and kicked out somewhere else, and you can't see it, but it's there. So please call the fire department, even on your small fires, all right? Fire extinguishers. Anybody ever used one? Yeah?
Yeah.
Training?
No.
Real fire?
Directions while the fire was happening.
Yeah, you were what?
I read the directions on it while the fire was happening.
Did it work?
It did.
There you go. Any questions? All right, next slide.
Including the entire neighborhood.
The extended- So we're not going to do any fire extinguisher hands-on training, but I want to give you a quick review of one. Hey, I happen to have one sitting here. That was awesome.
Can I ask a quick question about
No.
Bob?
So, no, I'm just kidding.
So Bob, with the fire out, would you still evacuate the building?
Yes.
Even though the fire's out?
Yes, because you don't know the air you're breathing.
Okay.
National Life, December had a fire. This was the first fire, not the one everybody knows about. And this was in the basement in a generator. But they had carbon monoxide get a little further in the building, and so they went to every floor and did a check before they let anybody in the building at all. It was completely clear and it was fine, but it was like a 2-hour process to clear that building. It's all about the air quality. And so that's why you want to go ahead and get everybody out of there. Plus, what if the fire did push back to the fuse box and you don't know it? Because how many people go and look at the fuse box every day, or it's usually an outside area. So, For fire extinguishers, option if you use it. There's no requirement, there's no expectation. But if you do, two things must happen first. 911 call and initiate the evacuation. The building needs to be evacuating if you're pulling a fire extinguisher and getting ready to use it. Use a fire extinguisher only on small fires. If you need 2 fire extinguishers, you need to go. Okay, don't fight it out. It doesn't, I'll just let you know now, if you like take it and throw it into the fire, it won't explode and put the fire out. That doesn't work for some reason. You actually got to like turn the thing on. And also, keep your exit behind you. Fire will sometimes move in the opposite direction you're fighting. So if you're spraying, it will start burning more rapidly in the opposite direction in some cases. Fire is a living, breathing thing. In the fire service, we call it the dragon in some cases. So just think of it that way. So don't let it cut off your path. So if her purse right there spontaneously caught on fire, I'm going to walk around on that side before I start fighting it, because I'd rather the fire burn this way than towards that exit right there. All right, so real quick on fire extinguishers. Is anybody proficient in hand grenades by chance? Anybody? No? Okay. I asked that question once in a class, because I'm talking about the pen, and that's where my joke's building. But it was on that row, because that's always where BGS sits, right there. And 3 of them raised their hands. It's like, what? They were like, Marine, soldier. Okay, fair enough. So the reason I'm bringing that up is if you've ever pulled the pin on a hand grenade, these pins come out actually easier. These pins, if you see, are completely straight. The only thing holding this pin in here is, be careful when I'm end up breaking it off myself, this is a little plastic twist tie thing almost. And so you just need a little pressure for this pin to come out. If this plastic broke and I turned it that way, the pin would just slide out, okay? You got to get a little oomph, I would set it on the ground and then, kind of get my elbow and give it a good tug to break, or you could twist it and it'll come off. Now, what's happened when you pull that off, there's like a little pin sticking up, just like a nail is sticking up. The handle on the top going down is what pushes that pin in there, just like if you're spraying hairspray or bug spray or something. The reason I tell you that is people believe that because this handle moves, that it's these coming together like a duckbill that makes it fire. And so what happens is people, you're starting to figure this out, you're smiling a lot, I think I know where he's going with this. So people think that once they pull the pin, they're scared to hold it. And so they do this weird cradle thing after they pull it, because it's like, this is what's going to fire it. So then they get the nozzle out, and then they realize they can't squeeze the handle. So then they do this, and well, now I can't aim it. And then they get in this weird, it's just comical sometimes. It's like, no, it's okay. Pull the pin and hold it. It's not going to go off. It's only the top handle going down. All right, so you pull the pin, you got your handle. What I'm talking about is called pass, by the way. And then you take the nozzle and you squeeze it. Now you get some stuff flowing out. It's going to be a powder. It's not water. It's not wet. It almost looks like baking soda. A lot of it. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's like big old messy. Oh, I'm sorry. I probably just wipe off your glasses. It's just going to be a big old messy stuff, but it absolutely works if you aim at the base of the fire. The base of the fire. That's testable. Not today, but whenever you have to actually use it. Think of fire as an animal. You're trying to sweep the legs out from underneath it so that it will fall down. Okay? Spraying into the flames honestly does nothing. The chemical reactions occurring from the fuel turning into the flames. Sometimes if you look at a campfire and you can get right next to it, you'll even see a little gap right there. That's the chemical reaction, the fire triangle, heat, fire, and fuel. And that's where that magic's occurring. This is to interrupt that triangle. You break the triangle and the fire goes out. So you've got to spray at the base of the fire, all right? And then sweep back and forth. So here's a photo of somebody just doing that. First, your extinguisher is going to run roughly 10 to 18 seconds. Doesn't seem like much, but like I said, a lot's coming out. So you can knock down a fire pretty well. And so maybe you don't get it put out, but you've slowed it down considerably and you've bought time for other people to get further away from it, and you've reduced the amount of damage it's going to cause before the fire department shows up with the big guns. Yeah, also remember the fire's out. It just may be visually. would be considering that. You don't want to necessarily stay there and watch it because you're breathing the smoke. I would still get out of there, but be aware just because you think you've put it out doesn't mean it necessarily is out. And then this is so true. 85% of people that die in house fires die from the smoke, not the flames. All right? So you see this guy fighting this fire. Do you think that extinguisher is going to put all that out? What if I told you he's already put half of it out and he just started? Do you see this line here? And then you see this shelf? See, he's spraying at the base of the fire. He's trying to get it up under this liquid. This is a training exercise. And there's liquid there, and he's getting this up underneath it. All of this is just show. It's all about that foundation. Spray the foundation. You can knock out a lot of fire with this. Unless you just throw it in there like a hand grenade. It doesn't work. So, okay. All right. Fumes, gases, treat them like fires. Don't do what Bob 1 and Bob 2 did last summer when they smelt in an unnamed state office building here in Vermont a fume in a hallway. They're like, that smells bad. I wonder what that is. We should investigate. So these guys went down to the janitor's closet, got in there, got a mop bucket, filled it up with soapy water, and went back out in the hallway and walked the length of the pipes along the side of the wall, pouring the soapy water. What were they doing? They're what?
Air bubbles.
Looking for air bubbles. If there's air shooting out, a leak in a pipe, it will create bubbles in soapy water, and you'll be able to identify what the leak is. Don't do that! Really? Because what if it goes boom? What are you wearing? You're not wearing what the firefighters are wearing, who would do a completely different approach. They're going to come in there with their readers to determine the air quality. They're going to shut off the utilities, and they're slowly going to approach it, and they're going to be breathing on the air. They're going to have a fire hose as a backup. They'll have all these things in place. Treat it like a fire. You got to evacuate the building. What does natural gas smell like? It's kind of a trick question, but both answers I'll accept.
Gas.
What? It doesn't. Rotten eggs. Both are correct. Natural gas has no smell, so the gas company injects what they call a perfume of rotten eggs d'Avour or something into the natural gas, so that if there's a natural gas leak, you smell rotten eggs.
That's also sulfur too, isn't it?
I don't know if they put it in sulfur. I think sulfur just naturally just really stings.
Like rotten eggs.
Yeah. So when you smell rotten eggs and you're in the office environment, first, find Bob. You know, what time is it? Oh, no, it's not time for his 2 boiled eggs that he likes to cook for 12 minutes. Okay, then we've got potentially a natural gas smell. We got to evacuate. And then let the fire department come in there and do their thing. They're the professionals. They got the equipment. When you don't do that and you investigate, this is what a natural gas explosion looks like. This was in Indianapolis a few years ago. This was actually intentional, where they ran the gas on a stove, and then they set up like a candle or something, a fuel, and when the two met, 4 houses were completely leveled, and I think 32 homes received so much damage that they ended up having to be torn down. Okay, natural gas is not something to mess with. All right, I recently had to add this slide. I can't believe I did. Have to, but unfortunately I have to tell you what to do during a fire alarm. Leave the building. Don't take your desk chair with you because you don't want to have to stand in the parking lot while waiting for the emergency to be over. Yes, this is an employee that actually evacuated with their desk chair. The picture is them going back to their desk with the chair. I responded to this. I saw it. I couldn't believe it, and I was chasing the person, trying to get my camera turned on as quick as I could with my phone because I'm like, nobody's going to believe this is happening, and I needed to hit that point, all right? Now, one day, I don't know if this employee's had this training or not, but one day the employee's going to be like, hey, I got a jacket like that. You know, that'll be the day of the slide I'll have to go. But until then, yeah, you know, sometimes I just tell stories and be like, yeah, that didn't happen. I'm like, no, they really... All righty. Okay, you're on the second floor, your jacket's on the third floor, your cell phone's on the fourth floor. You don't get to go get those things. You got to get out of the building. And at the evacuation point, check in with your safety wardens, and then don't leave until your safety warden or your higher level manager tells you it's okay or provides additional guidance. Resist the urge to wander, all right? Okay, next category, medical. All right, we all, well, maybe not. So how you feeling? Not good? You're okay? Yeah, well, the rest of us know what you had for breakfast. It was a can of sardines. You just love sardines, we all know it, but you didn't know that they'd been left out the night before, and so you ate like it was bad, and so about this time in class, your stomach really starts hurting, and it's bad, and you go to leave and you can't make it and you collapse. Okay, so she's laying on the ground now. We don't have to do it, you're good. But stomach ache, a lot of pain. She's not unconscious. It's not a CPR or anything like that. What are we going to do for her? Call 911. All right, what are we going to tell the dispatcher? Okay, where? We're right here. 109. Okay, you're at 109 State Street. All right, what else? Auditorium, thank you. Most people don't even think that. They just give an address. How many doors are there to this building?
4.
I will accept the answer a lot. Yeah, 3, 4, there's 4. So there's 4 different places somebody can come in the building. Where is yes, sir?
You're going to tell them to come up Governor Davis Avenue and come through the front doors. You're going to alert the security upstairs, have somebody hold an elevator so that the emergency people can get the bed into the elevator, down to the basement.
Somebody got to read ahead slide. That's absolutely the point I'm trying to get to. We have a horrible tendency of just saying the building and that there's a patient in there. We might say a room or we might say a floor, but a lot of times when I ask people, where's the ambulance, what door are they going to come to, the answer commonly is, well, whatever one they pick. No, they don't know the building. Maybe one of the 2 on the crew was here 9 months ago, but they've been to about 400 buildings since then. You can't expect them to know the building. And so you decide what is the best way to come in. And so he laid all of that out. And that's what you tell dispatch. Hey, when you should come up, Governor Davis, when you should come to the main entrance, there's a security desk. We're going to have somebody hold the elevator for you and come down the elevator. And so part 1 is to decide for your building where you want that ambulance to come to. The shortest route that these guys with this huge stretcher that's got an oxygen tank, probably an AED, it's got a battery on it that makes it go up and down. This thing's a beast to move around. So do you want them to tackle stairs with it, or maybe there's a loading dock elevator? So he brought him in street side. What about this door? I'm sorry? True. Not many, not a full floor, because you've got about 2 or 3 steps, and then you pop right out on the street.
That's if you know that.
If you know that. Well, you got a few minutes. Send some people out to go find the best entrance.
Stairs to that set-aside door. Like
Yeah.
right here, you have the elevator, brings it down, and wheel it right down.
You are absolutely in good care. All these people are working out the best solution to get somebody here to you. And so, yes. And so, yeah, his assessment is what we're looking for you to do as you make that call. And so he's bringing up the good points about where actual steps are, doors that are 2 doors versus 1 door, elevator versus stairs. But what also happens, a lot of people don't realize the non-traditional doors like this one. They don't even know they're there because we all come in the same door and we go out the same door all the time. We had an evacuation at an unnamed building, but I'll say it was in Barry, where we watched employees during a fire drill walk by the fire exit and go to the main exit of the building and go out. Half the employees had no idea that they were walking by a fire exit, and the other half said they weren't sure if they were authorized to use it. It's a creature of habits. So you have to think about that when you're trying to pick the shortest path to bring that stretcher to the patient. And then the second part, he's talking about holding the elevator. Everywhere where there is a turn, a bend, a door, put an employee. Then have one employee that is the escort for the ambulance crew. And that employee should never touch a door. Because here's what happens if they do. Well, this building's a perfect example. It's like a vestibule. You get 2 sets of doors. So if nobody's holding doors, and then the escort person's like, hey, come here, okay, and then these guys show up with the stretcher, they come to the front door, the escort holds the door and steps out of the way. Then the paramedics or EMTs and the stretcher are in front of the escort. Then they hit the second door. Then they got to back up a little to open it. And then they push through the lobby, and then the employee goes through 2 doors. And the crew is standing there waiting for that last guy to come in behind them, get around them, and then go to the elevator and push the button, and then they just stand there awkwardly. So, you doing any fishing? You can speed up the process significantly if you think of the best route and then put people at those routes, especially if you have doors that need these. Okay? So that's the first thing. Now, second, the rest of us are hanging out in here with her. This room, not so much, but in your normal office environment, while you're waiting with the patient, what can you do for the patient to facilitate this rapid access? Yes, sir.
You move all the furniture out of the
Thank you.
so that they can come in and have complete access. And plus, by if you get enough people involved, you're getting them doing something, so they're not just freaking out, kind of stressing out and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Here's what you don't need. Can I hold your hand for a minute? Would you be okay with that? Yeah. It's going to be okay. 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 Where the hell? It's going to be okay. Hey, stop taking pictures, okay? It's going to be okay. That's what we end up usually seeing. And so think of a rules of 3 when somebody's laying on the ground. Take the width of their body and times it by 1 on either side. So you need 3 times as much space because the first paramedic's probably going to go to his knees or her knees next to the patient, and then the other EMT paramedic's going to go to the head. And they got to start working the patient. Then they're going to bring the stretcher on the other side, and then when they have treated and they're ready to transport, they pick her up or you up and then put you on the stretcher. So that's a lot of space that needs to be around them. And so in here we can't do much, but we can move personal belongings, collapse the tape, move the table, and then we think, what's the best way to come here, and then we escort them through. Yes?
You don't want to move her.
No, never.
Right.
No, unless the building's on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just keep Bob away, you'll be fine. It's a Bob joke. So, okay. All right, any questions on emergency medical stuff? One last thing I will add. If the patient has a purse or a backpack, a personal bag, go grab it and give it to the EMTs or the paramedics. Yes, they want their cell phone. Yes, they want their car keys, the patient. But what's most critical is there may be medications in the bag that the person takes every day. I mean, it may be just Zyrtec for allergies, but who knew that Zyrtec can't be taken with a, what was that thing you ate for breakfast?
Sardines?
Sardines, yes. Yeah, well, there's a sardine vaccine, but you can't mix it with Zyrtec. Who knew, right? So the doctor wants to know she's on Zyrtec to make sure that the drug that she gets at the emergency room doesn't conflict with it. Okay? I'm kidding. She didn't have sardines. It's okay. She's fine. So, all right. Okay, the last category, violence, and we're going to kind of split into 2 subcategories. This first one just talking about more of the daily stuff that we are exposed to, and the last thing is dealing with active shooters. How many of you deal with a customer base in which that customer base is sometimes not happy with the service that they are perceived that they're getting from the state, and they let you know about it? Who said every day? Yeah. Okay, we all deal with that. And sometimes there are clients, customers, citizens that are vocal about their dissatisfaction. And then a small proportion of them go beyond that, where they go from being rude or unprofessional to aggressive, a little scary. It becomes a threat. Listen to me when I'm saying this. Please, if anything, I want to have stick with you. It's this. Nobody working on behalf of the state should ever feel scared or threatened in the performance of their duties for the state. End of sentence. Yeah. But you've got control measures for that. And when things happen, as they do frequency, you've got systems in place. But sometimes we don't have that for people that go out in the field. Or they have customers come to their window and it's an open environment and it's uncontrolled. Or a customer's upset about one thing, but they bring that anger into your office and something you don't even relate with. And you don't know a history of them. You don't know where they're going. Violence is it's a path. And you got the one end where it's a very calm situation, and then at the other end, you've got somebody that's committing violence, and they're dangerous, and your health is in danger. But there's a spectrum, there's a path that climbs up it. And what happens with state employees is a person that you're dealing with is getting more and more upset, and you're seeing this. There's a tendency of the state employee to try to de-escalate. They're trying to get the person off the ramp. They're trying to get them to stop from continuing getting angrier and angrier. And no matter what you say, you can't get them to sit down, and then they start pacing back and forth and their face is red, or they're starting to knock papers off. You have to realize, as that's going up, that there's a point where you have to exit, where you have to disconnect from that person and get away from them. There's things you can do where maybe you grab another employee, or maybe you make up a lie to step out of the room to get something to help the situation, but you use that lie just to get away from them. You go to a supervisor, you make a phone call. If one of the officers got a panic button, you go ahead and hit the button, or you just abruptly run out of there. You've got to realize earlier in the process that it's time to go, I need to disconnect, versus attempting to de-escalate. And you need to be willing to call the police sooner versus later. Because you're trying to predict a future and how much time you've got to this point. But what happens is we get up to the point where the person's starting to throw things, they're screaming, they're cussing. If that's really developing and that's when you call the police, you've got at least 4 minutes, probably 6, 7 minutes before a police officer's standing there. That's a long time for somebody to continue to go up that ramp. And so you got to make that decision earlier. I was a reserve sheriff's deputy for a bit, and then I was military police. All the time we would get dispatched to an irate customer or something going on in the workplace, and we respond. And one of two things would always usually happen. We would show up, and it's over. And there's an employee injured, maybe some blood, there's property damage, and the person's gone. Long gone, because we got the call so late. Or the other side of that is we show up, and the employees meet us right in the lobby, and they show us the palms of their hands. Hey, everything's okay. It was a big misunderstanding. As soon as the guy was ramping up, we had a new employee. She called 911, and then all of a sudden this guy just broke down. He started crying, and he apologized, and he walked around, and he picked everything up, and he let us know that his wife told him she wanted a divorce that morning, and he was just emotionally burdened, and we've never had problems with him before, and he scared us for a couple of minutes, but then he completely chilled out. And we rescheduled an appointment, and he left, and everything's okay, and we're so sorry we bothered you. That's what we hear. Apologies that they called us and didn't need us. Do you know what a police officer or a sheriff's deputy thinks when they hear that? When it's over and there wasn't a need for us to be there? Do you know what goes through our mind? Nope. Yes, no paperwork. But what doesn't go through our mind is the exact same thing that firefighter in my office thought or didn't think. Why did they call us? because we go to too many calls where there was past violence that we were unable to stop, and all we're doing was cleaning up the mess. We were called too late, and those are the calls that keep us up at night. It's fine to call us 10 times, and I keep saying us, but law enforcement, it's fine to call the police, call 911 10 times in a row, and then get there, and then it wasn't needed, than to wait too long in the process and make that call late. Now, if you call 10 times in the same day, okay, maybe we need to reassess. But it's a reassessment. It's not that you did anything wrong. It's just maybe a re-education, or maybe we need to change the environment or something. But I'm just telling you, just like identifying a letter suspicious, just like saying that, hey, I know the fire's out, but we've got to make a call. In a situation where it's starting to look nasty, go ahead and get the police en route. A little earlier, it's fine. They show up and no harm, no foul, no paperwork. It's okay. Because the number one thing the state wants to do is ensure that you're safe. And there are people on duty 24/7, and that's their only job. And they don't want to show up late. They'd rather show up early and not be needed. Okay? Now, let's say it was on the phone. So you don't need the police to call. The guy's 100 miles away. But he said some very direct things. I think you're a terrible employee, and I think you should die. Have I broken the law? No. It's not. I know, she's saying yes, and a lot of people feel like that. I know you do right now, but it's not. But we do know that you're a horrible employee, and maybe one day I just need to make sure you're the one that dies. Have I broken the law? Yes. But what happens in most cases, the person that's threatening the employee goes the first path. And so you can't get a police case and get somebody arrested for it. But what they did is still not only unacceptable, but we want to address it. And so my office has that responsibility. So when any of you are threatened, once you deal with the immediate situation and it's mitigated, you've broken away or it was on the phone, then it still needs to be reported. And guess what? We have a system for that. We want you to do a threat report. You can literally go to Google, type in BGS Vermont, and hit the I'm feeling lucky button, and it will go to this page. Or you can just jump on the web or one of the state pages and drift over to the BGS site. Or you can go to BGS Security. But when you go to that site, after the incident is over, the emergency element's passed, then you come here, it says report a security-related incident. And so you click on that. I'm going to tell you about this report, and then I'm going to tell you why you're doing it. So wait for that. It's coming. So you do a report. So all these different categories you can do a report on. When you've got a situation where you say, man, I don't know who to tell us. And even if it's not in our narrow lane, we will find the person that will help you. If you're not sure which category to do, you just hit miscellaneous. Last winter, apparently there's ice around here. Yeah. Well, the corner of 133, there was ice hanging off the edge of the building, and it fell and almost hit a lady that was walking down the sidewalk. And I think it's not an area where it usually happens. And so somebody's like, oh, we got to notify. There's still more ice up there. Who do we tell? Somebody in the office said, hey, there's a web page for this, I think. So they drifted it here, and the report came to us. We got it immediately. Well, I'm a threat investigator, emergency planner. I don't do ice. But that's still a safety issue. So we picked up the phone, not email, and we called the facility manager for Montpelier and said, we got a priority safety event. And within 10 minutes, BGS was over there evaluating the site when one of the workers got hit in the head with ice. He's fine. It was a small piece. He was just fine. But anyway, it shows that it works, except for him. Poor guy. So you click on whatever, any of these categories you think, and then you get to one long screen, and this is the thing that says, hey, if it's still going on, stop filling out the paperwork, deal with it locally, call 911, do what you got to do. And then you can come back and file a report with us later. So when you take this, you just scroll this down, And these are just, I know you can't see this stuff, but it's just to give you an idea of what the one long screen looks like. And so it's basically a bunch of blocks that you have the option of filling out or not. You can skip them all and just jump to the end. What is most important is this box right here. It says narrative, and you've got this open space. And so let's say you had somebody on the phone that said they wish you would die, but they didn't say they're going to do it, but it unnerves you, rightfully so. So you email your supervisor and say, hey, I just got off the phone with Bob up in Newport, and man, he just ripped into me and said all these things. And so your boss said, hey, didn't you take that amazing training taught by that guy in security? Yes, I did. Well, then you need to go and do a BGS incident report. Okay, so you jump on here. Well, you don't, a lot of the blanks or the columns don't apply. So you kind of skip through that. Get to this box, take that email, copy, paste, submit. Why? So what's the advantage of doing this? This is the advantage. When you hit submit, there are 5 of us in the office that get in a special alert from software that sends us an email, and it gives us the title that you picked at the beginning, and it gives us the narrative you wrote. Now we can click on a link and go into and get all the rest of the blocks you filled out, and we can decide how immediate we need to respond to this. My phone is in my pocket right now, so if any of these popped in while I'm doing the training, I will stop and look at my phone to make sure it's not an emergency situation. And if it is, then I'm going to immediately call one of my guys, hey, you got this? I'm teaching a class. Yeah, we got that. We're tracking it. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean every report you're going to get a call within 5 minutes based on the incident, but like the ice falling, that was a hot thing. So this is an actual live case. I got permission from the person that submitted it to use it, and we've redacted much of it. But I wanted to give you a feel of what we're seeing, an average of 2 to 3 times a week. And so I'm going to read some of this. So basically, the backstory is that the person, the employee got a phone call from a client who left a recording on the phone. And so she wrote, he left a screaming and cussing voicemail on my blank line at 1:55. I returned it at 1:57. He proceeded to cuss at me, insult me, scream at me, talk over me, and ultimately verbally abuse me for nearly 10 minutes before he told me he hates me and hung up the phone. We rescheduled for Wednesday. And what I'm hearing across the state is like, yeah, we deal with this all the time. Now, you're going to have those people, and if you deal with them how you deal with them, that's, at a low level, that's fine. But when you get something like this is a little much. And so we need to know. So what do we do about this? Why are you doing this report and giving us this information, and what happens after that? We have 2 threat investigators in my office. One is a retired state police lieutenant, and one is a retired supervisory special agent, U.S. Secret Service. You want to talk about somebody who knows how to deal with threats? That's the guy. This may not seem like a big deal to you because maybe you get a couple of these a week. But what else had this guy done? Right now we have 2 cases in our database where customers have done this to 5 people. One of them, 5 people, 4 agencies in 3 different cities. None of them broke the law, so they don't get a police officer showing up at the door. But it's still not acceptable, and it's an indicator of potential for further violence. Because if they're acting like that now, 2 steps up, now they're starting to hurt people. And so we're using your initial reports to do data link analysis and identify those people that are starting to go up that path over a period of time. Now, if this was the first time, this is a single offense, and we have no history on them, we're not necessarily going to do as much as if we got 5 of these in one day. But some of the things that we will do based on the situation, first, if it's a threat like this, and you file the report in about 10 minutes or less, you're going to get a phone call from my office. And we're going to say, you all right? You okay? That's the first question. And second one, does your supervisor know? And if we don't feel like you've told your supervisor, we will. Because we want somebody that's there with you to check on you and watch out for your safety and make sure you're processing this okay. And then, of course, your supervisor just needs to know. Because you still start downplaying this. The supervisors, not so much. Because maybe they know that this guy did it to someone else 2 years ago before you were hired. So we're starting to look at the history and have we seen this person before? We can also reach out to Vermont State Police through the Intelligence Center and give them the name. They can't release a lot of information to us, but what they will release to us is if there is a concern or not. Like they won't tell us every little thing the person's done over the last 30 years, but they will say, this guy's had some felonies in the last few weeks. We might need to open up an investigation. We've had, I think, 2 times when an employee filed a report and it was something like, just really over the top rude. But when we called state police and gave them the information and they ran the name, the person had a warrant out for their arrest and they didn't know where they lived. But you do. I'm like, oh yeah, we got him right here. I got him coming in at 2 o'clock tomorrow for a visit. Okay. So in those cases, the additional information, because we're basically taking 2 different agencies and compared files, and now the person that was, in one case, was arrested by dinner time. That's the definition of karma. So those things open up for you if you report these things. But you may have had that one incident with him, but so did you and so did you. This is how we stop active shooters in the most extreme cases. We're trying to get in front of these people and what's going on in their mind and figure out the indicators. That 18, 19-year-old down near Rutland that was playing in the active shooter, how did he get caught? This girl he was texting saw his messages as he was like making these plans, and she reported it to New York State Police, who then notified Vermont State Police, who then had a teacher report something unrelated on the kid because she was worried about him. That's data link analysis. 2 separate stories, but we got them matched up. It was enough to get a search warrant. And then that's when the plot was completely revealed. And an active shooter was prevented right here in Vermont. That's what we're trying to do here. We need these reports. We need to build the total picture of what's going on. Now, I'm not saying every time somebody drops the F-bomb on the phone, you got to do a report. You know what is kind of the normal, just people acting dumb versus threatening language or scary or suspicious. I need you to fill out these reports. And in turn, we will provide you that coverage. Now, I mentioned my Secret Service agent. So let's say this gentleman had done this maybe 2 or 3 times, hasn't broken the law, state police doesn't have much on him. What are we going to do? We'll either call the person and have a conversation with them, or some cases we'll go visit them. We'll take a sheriff's deputy or city officer with us. But here's the great thing about Keith, our retired Secret Service agent. Keith is 6'5", and Keith can rock a suit. There's only one thing that Keith doesn't know how to do, and that's smile. Sometimes I eat lunch with him, and I'm just kind of looking to see if he's got teeth. I don't know. He just... And so when Keith shows up at your door at 7 o'clock at night with a uniformed officer and wants to talk about what you said on the phone to somebody in this office about 3 hours ago, it sends a strong message. I'm under arrest. Oh, no. Yet. But we're also looking into the house. Are there guns laying on the coffee table? Is there swastika flag up? Are there abused animals on the property? All these indicators that we can continue to data link analysis and figure out what's going on with this person and try to get in front of them before things get too bad and before somebody gets hurt. In minor cases, sometimes if it's minor, we'll talk to management, your manager, before we make that step because you all know this person better than anybody. And so you all may say, listen, we want to take a shot at him first. We want a first-line supervisor to communicate with him, talk about, appropriate behavior. And so we think if you contact him, it's going to agitate him more. We want a shot. Like, okay, we're out then. We will go into monitoring status, and we ask that once you talk with him, give us a report back. And so you do that. Then we go straight into the same software program, and we add the notes. It's like a database for these threat cases, and we'll add the notes in there. So if 2 years from now, he pops up with another agency and did the same thing, and the management's like, well, we want to talk to him. Hey, guess what? That's what happened last time. Here's the name of the manager that talked to him. If you want to call that manager and get some cross-talking here, but this is what we've got from an old case with him. Oh, okay. Well, maybe we should do something else instead. Okay. So security office, we will work with management in deciding the path ahead to address people that are being threatening to you. But just like the bomb sheet card, just like the phone call to 911, you start the process. You've got to give the original data so then we can help you and we can protect everybody. Okay, so we're on the home stretch now, and the last part is the second part of violence, and we're talking active shooter. Run, hide, fight has been the standard since '99 when Columbine occurred. And the intent was, get away from the shooter if you can. If you can't, hide, and then if they come in the room, try to fight. Well, unfortunately, this country's had almost like 20 years of dealing with this, and the research is now showing that concept doesn't work. Because here's what people are hearing. The run, they don't know where to run to, they don't know where the shooter is, and it's scary to go into an area you don't know running when you've heard shots in that area. Hide has become the most comfortable answer there is. Because when we were children, we hid. Firefighters know when they're searching a house for fire, they look in the closets because kids will hide from the fire. And so we know the shooter's not in this room. It's scary out there, so we're going to hide. And maybe the shooter comes in, he won't see us. We'll turn the lights off. Maybe we'll get along a wall where he can't see. And then fight doesn't make sense to us. How am I, who's had no training or in dealing with a life or death fight, I'm going to go against somebody who probably has more than one gun? And so run, hide, fight has become hide. We have switched, the state of Vermont has switched to an options-based approach for active shooter. There's about 3-ish programs out there, and we're using the one called ALICE, which is an acronym, and for the ones of you that got the red card, it's on the card what that is. So the ALICE training program is between 3 to 4 hours. A half of it is hands-on. Right now, AHS is teaching it to their employees. They're up to about 700 employees have had that training. BGS, we've done a pilot program, but we're trying to get the emergency procedures done for all the buildings, the plans that I talked about earlier. And so later, we're going to transition and start teaching the ALICE class to all the executive branch employees. With that, what I'm doing now is an introduction. I'm giving you some basic tools and conceptual things and some little tricks to use if you find yourself in a building where you think there's been gunfire. All right? I got to get a little serious here when I talk about an example, and I need to show you an example where good things and bad things happen so you can see the points I'm making and they resonate with you if you ever find yourself in this situation. So this was the Virginia Tech shooting at Norris Hall. The shooter went to the first floor and he put chains on the panic bar doors. They were just like that. And he chained the door shut. And then he went up to the second floor, and then he went from room to room and verified where classes had students in them. And then he went back to the first room. The shooter started here, and as you can see, he shot 18 of the 19 people in that room. That first room didn't know they were going to be an active shooter until the shooter was in the doorway. So the whole run, hide, fight, all they had the opportunity to do was fight. But it's hard to do that when somebody just pulls out a gun and starts shooting people. Room 206 across the hall, they heard the gunfire. They were slow to respond. Why do you think that happens?
Shock.
Shock? Who said disbelief? It's disbelief. Gunfire doesn't sound like gunfire when inside of a building. A vast majority of witnesses, victims to active shooters report that they initially heard what? Which sounds like firecrackers. They reported firecrackers, they reported construction materials, they reported hammers, sheets of plywood hitting the floor, but firecrackers is the number one comment that investigators hear. A bullet traveling inside of a building doesn't necessarily break the sound barrier. And then we've all been ingrained from Hollywood movies what gunfire is supposed to sound like. I can tell you from my training, it sounds like popping. It just doesn't, your brain doesn't register. And remember I was talking about experience with the brain? Well, that's what it does. It goes back to, well, what am I relating this? Well, they relate it to firecrackers because we've all heard firecrackers. And so there's a slow response. We're all waiting for somebody to say, hey, there's an active shooter in the building, you need to initiate your... But we don't get that option. All they got was they were hearing firecrackers. So the first room, they got no advance. This room got limited advance, and they started to move to lock down, turn the lights off, lock the doors, move along a wall that you can't see from the windows and the doors when the shooter came in there, and 12 of those 14 people were shot. Think about the concept that there's a guy in the building with a gun, so we're going to turn the lights off and get along a wall that they can't see us. It's Tuesday at 10:30 and you're in an office building or a school. Do you really think turning the lights off is going to convince a shooter who's probably been in the building before that the lights off means there's nobody there? They've had the training too. All it does is mean I got to search this room now. Also, what do all three of those doors back there have in common? If you take a look. They all have windows. Why do most doors have windows on them?
Look in, look out.
Right. And why do you need to be able to look in and look out?
See if there's anyone in there.
Yeah, well, so you're going through the doorway. You don't hit somebody with the door. So most doors have windows in them. It's a safety thing, in part. And so the shooter just looks inside. So if we go and lock that door, doors are designed for fire, and the doors have a push bar on them. So shooters are commonly putting one bullet through the glass window and reaching in with their hand and unlocking the door from the inside, and then they have access to the room. And what are they finding during active shooters? A bunch of people lined up like ducks, sitting down along a wall. 75% of people shot in active shooters die from their wounds. But in regular gun violence, only 50% of people, rough numbers, 50% of people that are shot in gun violence die. So why are people that are getting hit by bullets in active shooters more than another 25%? Why are they dying more than in a convenience store robbery or a drive-by? They're sitting still. But usually anywhere else where there's gun violence, a gun shows up and everybody starts running wild. And so the gunman is having to hit moving targets at a distance that's increasing versus a stationary target when he comes right up to them. But that's what we're setting up people to do. Turn the lights off, lock the door, and go line up on the wall and be quiet. Maybe he won't think we're here. And so that's what was happening here. So they didn't get a chance. They started to set that up and he got in. Well, this room, that's what they did. And 8 of them, when he showed up, forced his way into the room, and that's what happened there. But then room 204, something happened. The instructor, a PhD in engineering, gentleman in his late 70s, he was a young teenager in Poland in 1939. This man survived the Holocaust. This man knew exactly what gunfire sounded like. And so when the first pop happened in 201, he immediately knew it was a gun, and he immediately told his students to start jumping out the window. Now the building, the older, big, beautiful building, the first story was really a story and a half. So you're on the second floor, it's about a 2.5-story drop down. But he told the students, start jumping out the window. And he went and locked the door and then put his body against it. So when the shooter went from 207 to 204 and got to the door, the students who were in that initial disbelief was overcome by this teacher saying, jump out the window. And they started moving. They got the window open and they started jumping out the window. The shooter got to the door and then a tug-of-war match started because the shooter got the door unlocked, but he couldn't force it open. Finally, the shooter stepped back and put 5 rounds through the door, striking the teacher and killing him. Then the shooter got in the room, and the last student was in the windowsill, and he shot and killed her. Those are the only 2 people that died in that room. These 3 that were wounded, leg injuries from the fall. Broken leg, sprained ankle. And people got them away from the window. The rest of them lived. The tide was completely reversed from these 3. So then the shooter, because he didn't have any time in there because they all got out, he came over here. Well, guess what they had been doing? They had a lot of time. They did a full barricade. Every piece of furniture went against that door. They didn't worry about turning the lights off or being quiet. They made a lot of noise. And they rapidly built everything up against that door. So when the shooter got there, he couldn't get in. He started shooting through the door, no result. And that's when the police started using bolt cutters downstairs and cutting the chain and entering the building. And he committed suicide. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Run, Hide, Fight. This is Alice. These people took charge and did something. They didn't sit and wait. So I'm going to go through some ways on how you can do that. Okay, so Alice, there's the acronym. I'm going to hit each one of these real quickly so you don't have to necessarily read all of those. But please understand, none of these are in order with the exception of the initial alert. These are done by whenever you need it. If you're in the first room and the shooter's there and that's where he reveals himself, you're going straight to counter. You hear shots at the far end of the building, maybe you're evacuating. You hear it down the hall, you're going to barricade. So alert is that initial thing. And again, it's not going to be, there is an active shooter in the building. When you listen to most police audio tapes, when they're dispatched to the call, rarely does dispatch even say active shooter. It's shots fired or it's reports of a person walking around with a gun. They kind of drift into it not realizing it's an actual full-blown active shooter. That's how it's going to be for you too. So when you hear something like, was that construction equipment? I don't know. But am I going to wait and get validation? Am I going to be like the professor from the 3rd floor who's going to walk down to see what's going on and telling their students to wait on the 3rd floor? Because that got him killed. So you got to do something. So the initial alert is going to be like just that. It's going to be on your own. If you're in a situation where you're sounding the alert, we don't want alarms, we want voice. Tell people what's going on and what you know. A beeping from a fire alarm is useless compared to there's a guy on the 2nd floor in a yellow shirt with a knife walking towards the west wing. Okay, I can use that and I can make decisions. All right, lockdown. So that's where your exit's going to go right to the shooter. There's not another way out. Maybe you're on 2nd, 3rd floor, and you're kind of stuck in this room. And so we're going to go over some techniques real quick to give you an idea. First, that's where they're starting to stack furniture up. Is that going to work? Yeah. Yeah, the guys in the back are right. But which way does that door swing? In. How do you tell? Oh, wait, huh? What? You talking about this? Yeah. Will you look at the door back there? Which way does that door swing? Yeah. Those bars are called closures. And by just glancing at it, it doesn't necessarily tell you which way the door swings. Now, if the arm of the closure is sticking towards you or pointing towards you, the door swings towards you. If the arm like that is sideways, the door swings outward. That's a lot to remember when you're under stress. Here's the easier way to remember on the door, the hinge. It's important to know which way the door swings on how you're going to barricade it. So this technique really doesn't work because that stuff's just going to slide out of the way when the door pushes against it. There's no weight in these things. All right, so what do they do here? First of all, which way is the door swing? It's swinging outward. So what they did is they've put a table and they've tied the table to the door handle. So when the door handle is pulled outward, the table's going to be pulled into the door frame. Is that going to work with the way it's set up? Probably. What's going to happen to that table? It's going to flip upward. So let's not start out like that. What you want to do is take your table turn it on over, slide against the door frame so it's flat on both sides, and then take, what is this? Yeah, does anybody have any of these in your offices? Plenty, exactly. These are incredibly strong when being pulled long ways. I guess you can't pull it sideways, it's always going to be long ways. But anyway, these are an amazing thing to use in an active shooter because you can get them within seconds. All right, but don't forget to save your files before you yank this off your computers. So all you have to do is you got a door that's swinging outward. I would do it more towards the way that's open. Tie it off, and a literally simple knot like that will work just fine. And then wrap it around the leg. All right, it's kind of messy, but I did it quick. So when the door goes to open, it's pulling the table into the door frame, and maybe they can get a hand through there, but their body's not coming through there. All right, and if I had more time and, maybe I don't know where he's at, we're going to dress it down, maybe put a second one on there. But it's a simple technique to shut that down. Now, let's talk about, okay.
That's a fire hazard 9.
Yeah, well, I know. I got a fire extinguisher. So, all right, so let's say he can't stick his hand through there. So now what can we do to deal with that if we're worried that we weren't able to seal that door off? Get the gun? How are you going to get the gun? Yes, just like in the movies, right? Because it always works. So instead of saying necessarily get the gun, it may be to try to get the hand or hurt the hand. And so what is it around here that maybe we could use to do that? Yeah. Yeah, oh, good. We'll come to that next. So you know what's beautiful about a fire extinguisher? The bottom of it. They're always like an edge.
Why don't you just discharge it?
I'm going to get to that and actually have a photo of that. You can do that, but it'll push him in the other room and then he'll come back. I would discharge it if they're coming into the room. You're trying to set this up and they got through it, or another situation, maybe the door was set up different, or it was glass and they just put a bullet through it and then walked through. So discharging the fire extinguisher is a wonderful technique, but don't treat it like a fire, okay? Don't run up and be spraying his feet, okay? This is when you aim for the head, okay? Right in the eyes, you gotta reverse it. And it's not gonna be on the label for active shooter spraying face. It's not gonna be on there. The reason I was talking about the bottom is you can have somebody off to the side and they've got it like this, and when that hand comes through, just do a chopping motion down. This is extremely heavy, and so it would be a pretty beneficial tool. Or if they stuck their head through, or so forth. If they came through completely, then I would definitely spray them, because it gives you distance and it buys you time. Alrighty, so that technique. So, as you can see, they just literally tied off the doorknob. Fire hazard removed. I would, again, you want to have it at the end that's swinging outward. And you can take 2 cords, tie 'em. You can put as many people as you want. and then stand there and just hold it. The door swinging out, this is a wonderful technique. If the door swung inward, I would go to the other side. So it'll come in some, but you're still potentially preventing their body from getting through. Or maybe there's 2 exits and you don't know where the shooter is, so you set this up at both, and then when the shooter shows up at one, the other exit everybody starts to run out of. And so maybe this doesn't work based on how it's structured. This is a wonderful wall, nobody's going to shoot through this. If the shooter hits resistance, they always shoot through the door. And so that's why it's beautiful to be away from the door when you're holding this. Do you see the smile on their face? Yeah. Why are they smiling? Yeah, it's a training. That's exactly it. They're teachers and they're out of class. But I like to say, because they know they're going to live. They're being given options. I did it. There it is. It's something, it's empowering people. All right, let's see what else. Look what they did there. The door on the right has no door handle. It's a stationary door that's probably got bolts at the top and bottom. This door swings which way? Yeah, out. No seam, or no hinges. So they slid the printer table up against the door that won't open and unplugged it and tied it right to the doorknob. So that door's not going to open now. You can't print, but you can't, you're going to keep the bad guy out of there. Oh, my favorite one. So we were talking about those things at the top of the door, which are called closures. And so, does anybody have one of these? Yeah. You're going to always, if you got 4 or 5 people in the room, somebody's going to have a belt on. So you take a belt. I'm going to demonstrate back here as we run all the way to the back. It works perfect on a door swinging outward. You take your belt, make one loop, and then put the loop over this. So you just ratchet it down and then loop it around it as many times as you can. So I just did 3, loose end. If I push any further, I'm going to start breaking things. And so there's only like an inch that I'm getting this door to move at all. Now, I've had people ask, well, can we get like special equipment that you could use on the doors? You can take fire hose, for example, and cut it in like 3-4 inch sections and then just slide it on there and it's faster. There's devices you can put on the bottom of the door. There's special hinges there's all kind of products out there. But we've got over 300 state office buildings. We estimate approximately 8,000 doors. And all of them have similar qualities but can be different. So I don't want to put a particular product that you have to learn a particular way for a particular door. I want to give you options, tools in your toolbox. That's how to use a belt. That's how to use a table. That's how to use an extension cord. And then you find yourself at the mall in a situation and you've got some ideas. Inform. We have a tendency in emergencies, we absorb information, but we forget to share. And so inform is kind of reminding you of that. If you get out of the building and you're running out of there and you look up and you see on the 2nd floor conference room through the windows, there's a bunch of people in there. But you look up on the 4th floor and you see the shooter walking by. Do the people on the 2nd floor still need to stay in there or should they make a run for it? Yeah. So call them. Or you come out and you know where the shooter is, or you were on the 4th floor and the shooter was not there. You see a police officer, inform. Talk, share, push communications, share information as much as you are sponging an end. You've got to remember that you're scrapping for knowledge to be able to make a decision. Am I barricading him? Am I making a run for it? Or is it so imminent that I've got to make a decision to counter? All right, so speaking at counter. All right, so all of these tactics on using how to shut the doors down, communicating, they don't mean anything if the shooter picked your room as the first spot he was or she was starting in. So the door just opens up. And somebody you don't know showing up and like, excuse me, this is a meeting for, and then they just drop a backpack and they pull a gun out. What are you going to do then? Because run, hide, fight, That's when you get to the fight part, but we don't fight bad guys. We counter. And so if you all look around, every one of you has something you can pick up. We're saying that when the situation is so desperate and you have no other options, you pick something up and you throw at them. Because if Eric was standing there and I threw that at him, what is he going to do? He's going to duck. So while Eric is ducking, he's not shooting. Sorry, Eric. I went from Bob to Eric like that. I don't know what happened. So, yeah. Now, one of these only bought us a couple of seconds where the guy wasn't expecting that. But that's 2 more seconds that the rest of you have as an opportunity to snap out of it. And then you realize, well, you just threw something. Oh my gosh, this is, yes. And that's when the second object comes and the third object comes. And maybe only 5 of you remember to throw something, but the shooter who's come in there to do particular things is now getting a response they weren't expecting at all. And guess what? Most active shooters went and bought the gun for the act of shooting. They're not experts in the gun. They've never done this before either. And so when they get an unexpected response, they pause. They freeze. Only a seasoned person, maybe a combat veteran or law enforcement, will be able to immediately respond to that. When I did the active shooter instructor course for Alice, I mean, I know what I'm doing. But when I was doing scenarios, I found it difficult when I had multiple people doing something at me. It screwed up my ability to use a Nerf gun to hit the students when we were doing scenarios. And so that is the counter. But like I said, it only buys you a few seconds. Unless somebody's lucky and hits them in the noggin. Would you pick up that black mug? Or either one of them. We'll pick both of these up. Hold these up. This guy's sitting here with 2 weapons over here. You know? Can you imagine getting dunked in the side of the head with that? Thank you. But even if you get something small, a pin, it's an object coming at them that their brain's got to activate. Yeah, but I found out most of the state employees won't throw the phone. Ah! Oh, wait, hold on. Can I borrow your phone? Yeah, no, it's a problem. All right, so the next part is a thing called counter. Okay, I need 5 volunteers. Eric's just staying right here. We're going to make you the bad guy. I need 2 of you on either side of him facing the audience. Tell you what, come down here, Eric, and face me. Right there. All right. 2 of you come forward. I need each of you to take possession of his arm between the wrist and I almost said the first elbow, but I think you only have 1 elbow there. So between the wrist and the elbow. Just 2 hands on it, and don't let it go. This arm is yours. You don't let it go anywhere.
To you.
That's all you do. You don't do anything else. Gentlemen, I need you to do the same thing. You're going to come up and try to take a knee, and then you're going to grab him between the knee and the ankle, and just, the knees and the ankle. You're just going to reach down here and hold on to his leg. Okay? All right. I need you to step forward and have a seat in that chair.
Oh, sorry.
Can you seriously get away?
Can I seriously get
Yeah.
away? No.
Okay.
Take it away?
Okay. All right.
No.
That was it.
I'm done.
Okay. I promised amazingly expensive prizes, so everybody gets a BGS notepad. Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Oh, you laugh. At the bottom of this is the website to do the threat reporting. So, yeah. So, see, they're basically rich
I'm going
now.
to report this.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much for our demonstrations. That was great. I only had one where somebody got hurt in that. So, all righty. I used to set a $100 bill down in front of them and say, "Can you pick up the $100 bill?" That's when things got serious. And then somebody actually got to it, and they're like, "Wait a minute, this is fake." And I'm like, "Well, I'm a state employee. I can't afford the real thing." So, Anyway, so that didn't go well, so I just stopped that. But that was a simple version of what we call, or I say simple, that's the version of what we call a swarm. And so what we need is, as things are flying through the air by just a small group of people that can remember that, then a few people that can stomach the energy to realize that they're in a life or death situation could jump up and run to that person and just grab a limb, anyone they can get to, and just hold on. That's it. None of those gentlemen were trained in hand grenades, so I'm assuming none of them were prior military. I don't think any of them have fought ISIS before. Okay, we got one that's fought ISIS. So what I'm saying is that it's a tactic that anybody can do, male or female. You need at least 3 people to actually do it. If you go up there all by yourself and nobody helps out, it gets awkward really quick. All right? If you get 5 people that run up there to say, I'm going to grab a limb because I don't want to die today, then we tell the 5th person, grab the head. Because there's an old saying, where the head goes, the body will follow. What usually happens, though, is as everybody rushes up there, it's not like they have an opportunity to say, oh, you get the left leg and I'm going to get the right arm and you do this. No, everybody kind of bum rushes up there to grab a limb, but you've got 3 or 4 people that rush up there to a shooter who's now dodging keys and cell phones, and all of a sudden they're swarmed and they all go crashing to the ground. And the shooting ends, and everybody in the room gets to live. Is there a chance somebody's going to get shot? Very much so. But do you want to be in a room with 2 people getting shot, or all but 2 people getting shot? That's the difference. It's pretty dark, but it's life. This is what we're faced with. So I've got some photos that show the technique being used. This was at a training this past December in Morrisville. And so you've got these the 4 teachers, and you can see they've grabbed the arms and the legs. They do it on a mat because they do it. He's trying to move forward, and it just demonstrates that they're going straight to the ground. Do you see them smiling? Why are they smiling?
There's tickling going on there.
Yeah. Because they got options. Plus, that's their principal, and they're wearing him out. I think that's principal. I'm not sure. But you can see, I mean, this is, it absolutely works. If the shooter is right across the hall and you don't have time to save your files and pull the cord and then go over to the table and set it up, and if you can't do that and maybe you only get 15 seconds, then pre-stage your swarm. Go to the door, turn the lights off, because when they walk into a darker room, it would be harder for them to see, and you'll have 15, 20 seconds for your eyes to adjust, and then you can go ahead and say left arm, left leg, right arm, right leg, and then as soon as they come in, you've already got your quick 15-second plan, and you can go for it. And when this is happening, tell the rest of the people, as soon as we hit him, run. Don't hang out in here. Step over him, step on top of him, and run. The Sandy Hook shooting. The school was locked down. They locked their school down after school starts. And so when the shooter got to the front door, it was locked. So he stepped to the right and he put a bullet through a plate glass window. It shattered and he walked into the school. And after he shot the first 2 people there at the front, including the principal, he went to the first classroom. The teacher heard the shots fired from the glass and then from the struggle out in the main lobby, and she went to a lockdown. She shut the door, locked it, hit the lights, and then she opened up a walk-in closet and started shoving kids in there. She was half done when the shooter gained access to the room. A little boy, reasons unknown, yelled, "Run." 6 kids jumped up and ran right towards the shooter and went on either side of him, hit the hall, and was gone. They literally ran out of the school. Those are the only 6 kids that lived in that room. You've got to do something to increase your chances of making out of there. And the shooters are expecting you to line up in the wall and wait your turn. And when you change that behavior, the odds went from them to you. And so that's why these techniques work. But these 3 people got on top of this gunman in this training event with all the rubber balls flying, that quick from the doorway to there. This is when training goes amok, but it gives you an idea of what you can do. So the shooters come in. This is one of the students that literally picked up a small desk and is just going to clobber the person. Because the shooter, as best as they can be, can only shoot one person at a time. They're only focused on one area. So people all around them, if they're all trying to do something, the shooter's going to be overwhelmed. So that's one of the instructors right there trying to grab and stop him. And there's another instructor back there who said, my career's ending right now. So in a classroom environment, all the kids are throwing books. And then there's the fire extinguisher option. I think this has been colored in because you'll get more of a cloud than just that. But just remember, aim for the face, not the feet. So, and again, these things buy you time. You take his vision out for 5 or 10 seconds, you can clobber him in the head, or just run past him. Become a moving target that's increasing in distance versus a stationary target waiting your turn. This is 1, 2, 3. Shooter came in a doorway from the left. He's aiming right in the center of the room and he's picking his target out. But these people on the far left, kind of barely in his peripheral, jump up. And as you can see, one gets behind him and starts grabbing him, trying to get the gun arm. The others are moving forward. I mean, within like 2 or 3 seconds, they're all over him and he's lost control. It works as long as you've got a few people that can do this. All right, evacuation. Most often, this is your best option. What's scary is you don't know what's out there. But in reality, the shooter is looking for groups of people that are not going to be resistive. And an individual zipping past them is probably not even going to faze them, or they're not going to take the time to chase anybody or to try to catch one shot and fire multiple rounds at one person that's fleeing through the building. They're just going to write that one off and go for the masses. They're looking for that empty room or the room with the lights off with everybody sitting in there being stationary. So evacuation is a very good option even if you think the shooter's somewhat close by. If you've got to run towards a shooter because they're at the end of the hall walking this way, no, you don't want to necessarily do that. But if you don't know where the shooter is and it doesn't sound like the shots are that close, make a run for it. And know your exits. Know that I could go out this door, go into the hall, make a left, go up 2 steps, and I'm out onto the street. Know your buildings. Know where to go for fires. Know how to get out of your building by the closest exit. Windows. Windows are an amazing, wonderful option that we rarely think about. Taught this class and I had a state employee say, well, the windows are not an option in my building. Talking about like breaking a window and going out the window. I'm like, well, why can't you do that? Well, I'm in a historical building. Now, I'm not saying for a fire drill you need to just go around shattering windows and yanking cords out of computers. But if you think there's a possibility that there's somebody in their building with a gun or a knife and that window's the closest option, then use it. To exit a window, strike it in the corners, not the center. Does anybody know why? The center of a window absorbs the most energy. Where it's fastened in the corners, it can't absorb and it's more likely to break. And so if you got to smash a window, now if you're picking up a giant chair, don't be trying to hit the corner, just throw it. But if you pick up a stapler and you're jabbing at it, or you got a hammer in your desk drawer, then yeah, you can use something like that. And we say the top corners because the glass will shatter. You hit it in the bottom corner, your hand may go through, and then glass could fall on your wrist. But if you don't remember all that, it's okay. Just break the window, do what we call a break and rake, and whatever you broke the window with, running along the edges of the window to clear out the shards. If you got a jacket, you could throw over the window sill so nobody gets cut and get out the window. And all those techniques are based on if you have time or not. You can easily survive a second-story jump, and you will survive a third-story jump, but you're not going to walk away from it. If you have to jump, that's the technique right there. Feet first out the window. You want to hang from the window sill, then let go. Why? Yeah, you're reducing your fall by your body height plus your arms. And so that will greatly reduce the fall. So that's the technique right there. Now, ironically, this is actually a photo of a guy breaking into a house, but it works for this example too. So, anyway. All righty. There's a long list of, what to do, about the police arriving. It's a long list. It's a bunch of technical stuff, and the police always want you to know these things. You're not going to remember all of that. So don't worry about it. But here's what I want you to remember. What unnerves police more than anything, when they're walking up to somebody, they don't know if you're a victim or the shooter, a witness, or somebody related to the shooter. They don't know who you are. They're not looking at your face. They're looking at your hands. This is what kills cops. You always see it on TV. Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. That's what they're talking about. Because if I show you my hands, I've proven to you I don't have a weapon. And if I've got a weapon, I'm going to have to do something to get it out, giving the police officer time to react to that. So you come running out of a building, maybe the shooter's hiding among the victims. And that's why when you see the controlled evacuations, you see the people with their hands like this, that's what it's all about. It's the hands. So you are evacuating. You're fleeing a building, that first police car shows up, and you want to tell that cop because of the inform, you want to let him know what's going on. Walk up to him showing the palms of your hands. Like, hey, this is what I know. Okay. That's all you got to remember. Just remember the hands. Also, if you got any injuries, the police are going to walk right past you. The first step in first aid is to stop the mechanism of injury. So they're not going to treat you while the shooter is hurting more people. They'll come back to you. All right. Real quickly, VT Alert. Who signed up for VT Alert other than just your state account? Okay, about half of the room. Usually we see about a third, a fourth of the room. You've got a brochure on it. VT Alert is how the state is going to communicate with you when there's a major emergency affecting the state. And it's a free service. All you do is you go to vtalert.gov, click on register, you go to this web page, and that's all you have to do is set up an account. You don't have to have a 15-character password with an emoji and a plot twist you change every 3 weeks. It's simple. And then when you go to the customization page, you can say, I don't need to know about the snow emergencies because I can see it's snowing and I've lived here all my life and I've seen a moose. I don't need to know that. But maybe you want to know about all the other kind of emergencies, or maybe you only want to know about Williston, so you can do geofencing with this thing. It's full of options. You can have it as a text message going to your personal phone, a voicemail, an email, work account, personal account, whatever. But when there's an emergency, there's a tanker's overturned on Interstate 89, and there's a green cloud, the first way the state is going to push out emergency messages on VT Alert. If you're not signed up for it, you're not in the know. And that's probably one of those messages you want to hear about. You want to be the person that's telling your coworkers who otherwise didn't know instead of the one in the reverse. Please, please, please sign up for VT Alert. All right, in summary, what's your next steps? Sign up for VT Alert, yay. Find out who your ECM and your safety wardens are in your building. And then if your building's got an EPP complete, find out about it. Specifically, ask yourselves, where do we evacuate? Building 133, we just changed it. You're now going to evacuate to the State House, first floor, room 10. We got you indoors now. 120, you're evacuating to 133. 109, you're evacuating to the State House. Because we're going to evacuate you indoors into one location so we can get a good head count. And we want to put you in a place where it's warm, there's lights, there's bathrooms, and it's easy to secure you and protect you. So those are the locations for those areas. If you've got any questions on your buildings I didn't mention, see me right after class. And then, your fire extinguishers. Nobody in their buildings knows where these things are at. And because they're in these locked boxes, people are scared to open the door. They think it's going to set off an alarm. No. Go find your closest fire extinguisher, open the door, take it off the hook. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. You're not going to get electrical shock or an email in 3 days from now accusing you of breaking the fire extinguisher. It's fine. You can get it out, look at it, get a feel for it, and then please put it back exactly the way you found it. And now you've increased your safety as well. I mentioned I'd hit trauma-informed at the end. If there's anything that's nagging you in your mind, please use this service. Again, mental health, part of total health. And then lastly, there's the BGS team in the security office that's here to help you. And if you've got one of these that's less than maybe 6 or 7 years old, guess what? The back of it's our phone number. So if you ever need security, 24/7, we answer the number all the time. Please give us a call. Even the minor stuff. You just want to be escorted to your car because it's dark. Call us. All right? Now, if you live in Brattleboro, it's probably going to take us about 4 hours to get there, but we'll come. That is it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks for your patience and letting me go over. Have a safe day.